Hello. In this video, I'll be covering how to get started with Virtual PTZ for NDI on Windows. So first thing you'll want to do is go over to lemonsqueezy.com, app.lemonsqueezy.com/my-orders, or check out the View Your Orders link in your order email. And in your orders list, go to Virtual PTZ for NDI, and there'll be two links down here, one for Windows, one for Linux. These contain the latest versions of Virtual PTZ for NDI. So I'm going to click on this. This is going to trigger the download of the zip file for Windows. So that guy downloaded now. All right. I'm going to extract that to a folder on my computer. I've got a folder on my S drive called NDI Toolbelt, and I'll call this VPTZ. I want to show the files once it's done extracting. All right. Next thing to do, launch tractus.ndi virtualptz.exe. This will bring up a console window on your computer. And when you see this, control and API available at localhost 8906, if I hold the control key and click on that, my browser will be launched and I'm in the config interface for Virtual PTZ for NDI. All right. I'm going to add an output. I'm going to call my output cam1. And for this one, I'm going to set it to 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames per second. My vMix project is running at 30. I will assign a source to it, which is my B9450, and clamp to bounds. If you answer no to this, you'll be able to move your PTZ, your surface that you want to blit, anywhere on the canvas, even outside the cropped area. If clamp to bounds is set to yes, you cannot move your image outside of your crop boundary, and you also cannot shrink your source any less than this 1920 by 1080 resolution. So I'm going to hit clamp to bounds as yes. I'm going to hit save, and this will create a new output for me. Now, if you are running Studio Monitor at this point, you should be able to see this new source on your network. So I'll bring over Studio Monitor here. I have a default instance. I'm going to right click, go to my computer and go Virtual PTZ Cam 1. And there it is. There's my camera in Virtual PTZ. So if I zoom in, I'm actually zooming in on the PTZ itself. Or excuse me, I'm zooming in on the Virtual PTZ. This is not affecting the camera itself. However, if I did want to adjust the camera itself, let me take you through some of the controls. I'll go back to the web interface, click on this Cam 1. Now, preset number 1 is always your default. You can always think of preset 1 as your home. So whether you trigger this through Studio Monitor, a physical PTZ controller, or through the web UI, you hit number 1, that is always going to return your Virtual PTZ to the default. Okay, cool. So I'm going to zoom this one in a little bit, and I'm going to pan to the right and pan up, and I'm going to hit Store Preset 2. So I've now stored this position as a preset. I can hit 1, return home, hit 2, goes to this saved preset. Now, what if I want to go and adjust the crop? Well, let's go do that. So I'm going to put Studio Monitor on the left-hand side of my screen here, and I will bring Virtual PTZ to the right. And now I'm going to change the control mode to be window crop. Now, what's going to happen is, depending on the crop direction I've got selected, the PTZ joystick here is going to allow me to set the crop window. So watch this. I'm going to grab the joystick. I'm going to go right, and you'll see in this transparent area, this part is now being cropped out. We're using alpha to do this cropping, by the way. We're using alpha to do cropping. All right, so I'm going to set crop direction to be right top. I'm going to bring that down here. I'm going to set crop direction to be right. And I'm going to bring this in here. I'm going to crop this way down. I want like a little box layout. And then we'll do bottom crop. And I'm going to do the same thing. I want just like a little box over here. All right, perfect. Let me turn on preview mode for a second. So if I turn on preview mode, we actually use about 25%, 30% alpha transparency to show you what your crop result is going to look like. So anything that's semi-translucent here is going to be cropped out when preview mode is turned off. I'm going to switch the control mode back to position zoom, and I'm going to move my image. All right, here we go. And move this down a little bit. All right, and zoom it out just a bit. Great. And then we'll move it back. Now notice that I have clamp to bounds turned on, which means once this image gets to the very edge, I can't move it any further. Watch this. So I'm at the very edge of the image. I can't move it any further. At the top, I can't move it any further. If crop to bounds is off, I can move this image outside the bounds. I can move it right off the canvas. So generally speaking, I keep clamp to bounds on. It's up to you. It depends what your workflow looks like. So I'll set that to on again. And I'm actually going to save this as a preset. I'm going to save this as preset 3. I'm holding the Shift key on my keyboard. And I'm going to click on the 3 in the web UI. That's the same as doing store 3 or storing the third preset on your PTZ controller. So watch this. I'm going to hit 1. That's my home. 2 is that zoomed in version that I saw before. And 3 is this cropped version. I'll disable preview mode now. Let me show you another feature, which is a nice transition between each preset. So if I set transition time to be 45, for example, 45 frames. So that's about a second and a half if I'm running at 30 frames per second, right? So I hit 45, hit save. Now watch, if I recall preset 1, the crop and the position are going to animate across 1.5 seconds. If I hit preset 2, we're going to zoom in, that animates. If I hit 3, that's going to animate the crop and the zoom, and I can go back to 1. All right. If you want to explicitly set crops, by the way, you can do that. Come in here to crop, and you can put in whatever numbers you want, hit save, and that will apply that crop immediately to your surface. These are in pixels from the left border, top border, right border, and bottom border. You can do some PTZ control from within the web UI as well. So say you had to nudge over a little bit. All right, cool. We can use these controls here. Then if I hit close on this output, I get taken back to the list. This is handy if you're working on mobile devices that have a very thin viewport. All right, I'm going to add a second output. I'm going to call this screen. This will be 1920 by 1080. I'm going to run this at 30 frames per second, and I'm going to assign it my other computer here, my Intel graphics. And I think we'll clamp this one to bounds as well. I'll hit save. All right, so I have a second Virtual PTZ. I'll go Virtual PTZ screen. That's what this one looks like over here. All right, now what I can do is, of course, I can zoom this in. Say I want to draw attention to some element on the screen. I can do that. I'm going to hit store preset 2. Preset 1, we're snapping back because I don't have any transition time set up. So I'm going to set up 60 frames. I want to be fancy this time. So I'll hit 1 to go default. Awesome, good. I'll hit 2 to zoom that in. There we go. That's a nice eased in zoom. So that could be handy, for example, if you've got some element that you want to draw attention to on a screen share and you want to zoom in on that. All right, and I'll hit close on that. Last thing I'll take you through, I'll maximize this window for now. In the Performance tab, we provide performance stats for each of the virtual PTZ outputs that we have. So up here is VSync, and down here is render times. So VSync should be plus or minus a couple milliseconds within the actual frame time. So if I'm running at 30 frames per second, I should expect VSync times of around 33.33 milliseconds. My average is around 33.33. I'm pretty happy. We've got nice consistent timing. For the render times, this is how long it actually took to realize the entire scene, from decoding the NDI source to resizing it to showing it and outputting it over NDI. So we're taking about 1.83 milliseconds to scale and display minimum, 2.19 on this one on average, so that's not bad. This will also tell you if you are dropping any frames, by the way, or if you've got frames that are repeated. So I'm going to reset statistics. I'll hit refresh a couple times here, let the stats build up a little bit. If you're familiar with vMix, this is probably looking a little bit familiar here with the way that we're displaying frame times. So this receiver is sending out, we've had 299 cycles, so 299 frames sent out. We've expected 299 frames, so we are not falling behind at all. This source is giving us what we need. So you may see drift go -2, -1 sometimes, but it'll snap back to 0. It's just the way that we calculate these statistics. And then my other sender, around 1.94 millisecond, 2.32 millisecond. Perfect. I'm pretty happy with that. And we also have a debug event log down here. So as there's different commands being sent to and from the API, we'll get updates of those down here. And there's an API. We're going to be updating documentation, and there's going to be proper docs on our Git book soon. So keep an eye out for that. But that is a quick tutorial on how to use Virtual PTZ for NDI. And I would be remiss if I didn't show you what the final result looked like. So I'm going to bring vMix over here. I'm going to add 2 inputs. I'll add screen capture here. So I'm going to cut over to my screen. Actually, I'll keep vMix up. And I'm now going to add a second input here, which is my cam 1. And I'm actually going to pop that up as an overlay. So vMix is able to interpret the alpha channel on this. My picture is now overlaid on top of everything. How cool is that? So I'll come back into Studio Monitor here so that you can see what the output looks like. So if I come in here and go cam 1, and let's say I want to re-zoom this in, or I want, whoops, I hit the wrong button there. If I want to come in and say move my position around, all right, cool. I can move my position around a little bit, and it's nice and smooth inside of vMix. All right, awesome. Well, that's everything. That's a quick tutorial on how to use Virtual PTZ for NDI. Hope you find it useful. I should also mention, audio does travel with Virtual PTZ for NDI. So if your sender is sending out audio, that will be passed through in Virtual PTZ. All right, that's everything. Thanks for watching. Hope you find Virtual PTZ for NDI useful.